My name is Antonio Di Benedetto. I am based in New Jersey, and I work for Leica Camera USA as product specialist. So the Leica International Society is really important to Leica Camera because it's a group of people who are not just passionate about the cameras and passionate about the brand. It's a community that brings like-minded people together to share experiences, share knowledge, and help motivate each other and push each other to do even more with their photography. So we're talking about night photography, and in particular long exposure night photography, because this is something that to get the best quality, you really have to drag the shutter longer, keep the shutter open longer, and soak in all that light and let it really come alive. In some environments, it can be so dark where you can barely see what's out there, but the camera can see more if you let it do so. So if you do that, you can actually start to pull in details that you have no idea are actually there. The sky can really come alive more. You can see, maybe depending where you are, you see a mix of light pollution with some actual stars. You can see a field, an open field that's completely black to your eyes. But if the shutter is open for long enough, maybe there's an entire landscape to be seen out there right under your nose. It really changes how you see kind of boring and monotonous things, or things that you encounter in your everyday life that you might underestimate. So to get into doing long exposures at night and night photography, it ultimately starts with what you choose to use. You probably want to just start with a sturdy tripod. That's of course important. There are many different kinds. The sturdier the better, but of course bring with you what you're willing to carry. So sturdy tripod to minimize vibrations, and because you have a very long shutter speed, sometimes as long as 4 or 5 minutes, and every little vibration can be picked up and you lose image quality. The other aspect is just choose your camera of choice and be wary of what the maximum shutter time is. You can usually look up the technical specifications, and some cameras may have a 30-second or 60-second maximum shutter time. Some may have a much longer. For example, the Leica SL has a 30-minute maximum shutter time, so that camera kind of became my go-to. And then for lenses, again, it comes down to personal preference. Usually when people think of landscapes and this kind of stuff, they think wide angle, 28 millimeter, maybe wider. Again, this is talking in full frame format. But there can be some really great stuff with a telephoto lens, so it all comes down to your choices. So maybe bring options, but try not to get too caught up with what lens to use. And you got to sometimes just be focused on getting those shots and just getting something, because your time may be limited in how much you can go out and shoot at night before you have to move locations. Another important aspect actually is you want to use either a remote cable release or maybe a smartphone app as your remote. If you don't have any of those options, you can always default to the self-timer of the camera. Set it to self-timer mode. Some cameras can vary, but a lot of Leica cameras you can dial in a specific shutter time, and then with self-timer, put it on a 2-second delay, press it, step away, and let it do its thing. So once you've chosen your camera gear, your tripod, your camera, your lens, the next thing is setting it up and making the actual photograph. This can you can go about it different ways. If you need to, you can start with setting it up on a mode like aperture priority and seeing what the camera reads. In really, really low light situations though, it can be pretty challenging for a camera to get an accurate meter reading. The good thing about digital cameras is you can guess and check and do a little bit of trial and error, and that's okay. The usual rule of thumb is set the aperture of the lens to whatever depth of field you desire. Most Leica lenses are known to be able to be shot wide open, so feel free to shoot wide open. But if you want to get everything in focus, stop down to 5.6, f8, whatever is necessary. But then in some really low light situations, you're going to have a very long exposure, and that can create certain challenges. Usually it's just good to try a test shot, because usually the first shots you get in a location are not the best. It's after you kind of warm up a bit that you get the better composition, the better shot. You give it some time to think. So it's usually a safe bet to set your ISO low to get the cleanest quality image, raise it if you have to, if it means getting the shot versus not getting the shot. So start at, say, base ISO 100, 200, set your aperture accordingly for your depth of field, and then see what the camera meters for the shutter time, and take a test shot. For white balance, usually a safe bet is auto usually does a fine job these days. All of our cameras, most cameras these days are really good for auto white balance, even in these situations. If it gets really thrown off though, tungsten white balance in urban environments is usually a good idea. You can dial in a Kelvin temperature that's really low if you like that more blue, really cool look. But if you're shooting RAW, which is always advised, especially for these kinds of photos, you want to be shooting RAW because you want that leeway. You can usually correct the color later if you get something that's kind of way off. Again, what's probably most important is getting a shot. So shoot RAW, set ISO low if you can, set the smaller aperture if you need depth of field, but work with the shutter time that you can. Sometimes a 2-second exposure is all you need. Sometimes it's a 20-minute exposure. So when it comes to the aesthetic of your nighttime photograph, your long exposure, there's different camps and different beliefs in how it should be represented. You know, some people believe that, and they maybe take this as unilateral thought on all photography, that it should look to represent the scene and how it was and how it looked to the naked eye. And some people are more fast and loose with, it's just how I want it to look. I am a firm believer that when it comes to these nighttime photographs, it's what you choose. Personally, I like to illuminate darkness. So for me to really see how, to represent how it looked to the naked eye, I would be taking a black photograph. So in my book, there's nothing wrong with turning this environment kind of surreal. It can look kind of ethereal when you illuminate this darkness and really drag out that shutter and soak in all that light. There's nothing wrong in my book with that. Now, in terms of color, you know, when you adjust your white balance and, you know, you can make things look really, really dramatic and maybe sometimes over dramatic where it doesn't look real at all. Then we really get into some nuances, and some may like it one way and some may like it another way. I usually take an approach of make the photograph you think looks the coolest and looks the most fun. For me, sometimes that's been, you know, looking pretty neutral, where someone, if I show up a picture to someone and say, I say, is this nighttime? They would say, yes, of course, that's nighttime. And some other ones I've shown people and I say, is this nighttime? And they might say, actually, I'm not sure. Oh, wait, there's stars, but it looks kind of like daytime. Totally fine. That's what is part of the fun about doing this and taking this, you know, world that we see with our naked eye and magnifying it to ways that we can never see. Location, location, location. You want to scope out places if you can, or, you know, even on your daily drive, if you see something like, oh, I wonder what that looks like at night. Go back there, be ready to shoot. Maybe you don't shoot. That's okay. Try out places that you're comfortable with to start. If this is new to you, you know, it can be kind of weird being out in the middle of the night on your own, especially if you don't have a buddy with you or someone to kind of be your co-pilot. And you want to try somewhere comfortable at first. You know, maybe if you're in your local town, if then someone stops you and asks you questions, you'd be like, yeah, I live here, you know, and they probably won't see it as such a big deal. But you want to explore. Part of the appeal of doing this is it's exploration, exploring places that are far away, places that are local to you, you know, your everyday places. So one way you can scope things out is just by driving around, get a little lost, try things out. You know, and another way is, you know, use the tools that you have at your disposal. Google Maps, Google Earth, right? Or other software programs and things that, you know, you can, I mean, bust out some old paper maps if you have to, and just try to get an idea. Sometimes though, like Google Maps and Google Earth can be really good because you can see, even in some areas, a 3D, CG rendering of kind of the topography and the layout. You can go somewhere, like look up someplace that's close to you and see something you never even knew was there. I've done this firsthand. In my own town, I saw these power lines and I thought, I didn't even know they were there, but they seem like they're in a cool location. went out there spent an entire night taking some photos, and it was just like a 5-minute drive home, which was nice. And then you might have to revisit those places too, because the best photos usually don't come on the first try, and they may not come on the first night. You may want to go back and try it in different weather. A cold winter night can have a different look and vibe than, a warm summer evening. And then, of course, you want to take into account your safety. If you're going out in the middle of the night, it can feel kind of dicey some places, but be wary of your surroundings. Probably one of the best tips I can get, because there's always another chance for another photograph, so you don't want to take any too severe a chance. If there's one thing to remember, you have to experiment. You gotta try it. Drag the shutter, let it go, try things out, explore, and just see what sticks, right? Throw a bunch of things to the canvas and have fun with it. If you're not having fun with it, then you're not doing it right. So you just gotta keep trying, keep experimenting, and you might come away with the best stuff in some of the most scenic places that you would think, yeah, this is a beautiful area during the daytime, so it should be beautiful during the nighttime. But you might get that easily, or you might get something that's in your local town that's everyone drives by and passes by every day without paying any attention to. But at nighttime, it creates this mood and this presence that, can be ominous, can be surreal, can be just totally different, or maybe just a creepy representation of something we see every day, but it's at night, and there's something about it that's unsettling. And maybe it's unsettling because there's just no people there. I photographed a playground at night, and I kind of joke when I show this picture to people, because I wonder if they just think I'm really creepy, because there's something odd about a barren wasteland-looking playground, and it only looks that way because of the tones, the color, and the darkness, and there's no people, there's no life. So experiment, try things out, try different locations, and see what you can capture, whether you're local, traveling to a destination, or even just, you bring a small tripod while you're traveling to wherever for other reasons, and you try and make a few photographs.